I want to welcome you all back to A Piece of Her, where we are working at blending a bit of boldness with a whole lot of grace. I am your host, Dr. LaToya, and today's conversation is, listen at this, Southern soil. The conversation is all about Southern soil, the beauty and the complexity of my upbringing. So let's dive right in. So you had the boldness and the courage to ask me a question that is really going to stretch me. It really is going to stretch me, which is, you asked the question, what do you think is the most beautiful part of growing up, even with all the struggles? And you all and the whole production team and everybody that you've heard, they are really giving me the permission. That's one thing about my upbringing is that I always felt like I had to have permission to be who I am, right. And to be totally real. So, and I have this thing where I want to kind of protect everybody, right. And so that's me. So, from my upbringing, absolutely. From a child, I always had a lot of weight on my shoulder. And so when you say what's the most beautiful part of growing up, even with all the struggles, I would probably say none, and that's just being really, really honest. And I'm saying beautiful in terms of growing up as a child. That's what I'm saying. So as an individual, there were a lot of beautiful things as an individual. But when I think about early childhood, I personally feel that I maybe had some struggles with not being allowed to maybe be a child, mm-hmm. and being able to experience what it is to just not have concerns, weights, burdens, seeing a lot of stress and pressure. That's why I really advocate for children being able to just be children, and not have the weight. Now, one of the things is like, we don't get manuals. So I've gotten beyond the point of, but that's just being honest of saying like, right. Listen, this was not a perfect, childhood, right. Not pinpointing it on anybody, but it's just life, mm-hmm. So being raised in a single parent home, a father who was present, but absent as well. Right. And so that gets tough, and so there's a lot of responsibility. And me, as you know me, I'm an overthinker. We talked about in the first mm-hmm. episode how I do a lot of observing. And so not by my own parents' fault, but by me just being naturally inclined to know. Mm-hmm. And so I probably inserted myself into spaces just as a person that was observing of things, mm-hmm. that I probably involved myself in a lot of things that maybe I shouldn't have, that were just readily available to me as a child, okay. When it comes to concerns and issues and challenges and all of that. And so it's hard for me to go back into that place of early childhood and really think of it being beautiful, experience. And now there were great times. I right. will say that. There were great times where we had, but I would be sitting here saying, yeah, we did this but there was a lot of tough things. Like, I often think about how sometimes people would say, well, you got to smile or you're not smiling. But in some environments, smiling would get you things that you didn't ask for, right. So you can't be walking down the block just smiling and waving at everybody, because it may get you some unwanted, attention, And so when you are trained as a child, when I think about it, it was the pressure. So for me, I wanted to let everybody know too that it's not that you don't have to work at being perfect, no. And you don't have to be perfect. Now, sometimes I felt like people looked at me and said, she thinks she's perfect. I say all the time, like, no, if I thought I was perfect, I'd be all over the world and on billboards by now. Right. But the truth of the matter is that I struggled to be what everybody else wanted me to be. And so I feel as though as a child that I had to be perfect. And so that is something that I've struggled with. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about it being beautiful, that is an experience that
I wish I could say like everything was wonderful. And I had to come to a point where I had to, you talked about forgiving yourself, but I had to learn to forgive my parents for what they may have lacked in their lives that had a direct impact on me and how I went about life. But it's hard to say what's beautiful when you've always felt responsible for things that you really shouldn't have had to feel, as a child. And so that's really tough, because I hope, when I looked at you, it's like, oh my gosh, like like you don't have anything, that you see beautiful. Like I said, I had lots of great things, like going to the county fair, hanging out, going to, traveling and doing different things like that. But those are things that we did. But I feel like part of who I am is that responsibility came from just being just so young. I had a conversation with my mother the other day, and I was telling her, I says, Mom, I had to tell her, like, I love you. I says, but there were just some things in terms of weights and pressures that I've always felt responsible for. And so it's not just like,
not your job as a child.
It's not your job as a child. And so those things make it difficult to see the beauty when you're wrapped in the pain, or you're wrapped in what should be this or what's not, and what's, all of those things. And me, because I'm an overthinker, I'm trying to figure it out, So as a childcare owner, I see kids coming in and they're, 10, 11, and they got to come in, and over the years of working in the field, I've seen the little ones come in and they have that weight, like, we gotta do this. I gotta do this. And it's like, no, you just need to be a kid. You need to enjoy some things. So one of the things about me, this is tough. This is really a tough question for me, because I have been, trained to be very poised and to always have a poker face. And I talked about the armor in the first, you cannot let everybody into your inner chambers.
Right.
So this is tough, because it's like you're letting the whole world into your inner chambers, and you're releasing some of that. And I've tried to protect my family too, so it's not that some people think, oh, well, she thinks she perfect, she don't never talk. No, it's not about me. It's about me making sure that I don't offend or hurt anybody that loves me and I love them, so my mother and my father, were awesome. And there's a lot of me inside, a lot of them inside of me that helps make me and makes me tough. I can remember a conversation I had with my father, and I told him when I got ready to go into the ministry, we had some conversations, and he said, and I'm gonna let you chime in too, but he said to me, he says, I says, Dad, he said, well, I would like to think that, we did well. I said, you guys did do well. I says, but I said, it's like my parents, I said, they're strong and they're tough, and they got some resilience behind them. And I says, but Daddy, I said, I need to be able to take off this armor and be able to have a softer way of approaching things. So because I have been very, very guarded, it's more or less like, okay, well, she's inapproachable. It's not that. It's just that's just the way that I've been, that's the way I've been raised and trained. So in other words, it's hard for it to be beautiful when it's a lot of work involved in that.
But that goes back to what that reminds me of is that's twofold. You have to forgive your parents for not even knowing, for just doing the best that they could.
Right.
So whatever mistakes they made or whatever poor choices we all do that.
Right.
So you have to forgive them, but you have to forgive that little girl who could not run a house, who could not take care of the family. You have to forgive the little girl who just wanted to be a little girl, who there were times that you had to do things that maybe you shouldn't have had to do. And so when you do that, you won't always have that pain. You have to, I have that issue sometimes, but I have to forgive the little girl who didn't know, who didn't understand. But what you developed out of that is a strong family bond. That's the beautiful part, because your mom, your dad, you have both sides of your family, your mom, your maternal side and your paternal side. and they were both all so bonded, so
Right.
strong. So out of pain and hurt, family was always there. Were they perfect? Did they always support you? Did they always show you love? No. But the beautiful part is that Dr. LaToya started as Toy, Snook, all the
Right,
little
right.
nicknames you had. You started there surrounded by a village. Now the village was confused, including me sometimes. So you came from a foundation of grandparents, praying grandparents, a grandfather that was a pastor, your grandmother was a
Right,
musician.
right.
And so the beauty is that no matter where Dr. LaToya has been, she's got that foundation. So when you forgive little LaToya, then Dr. LaToya can say, you know what? Yep, Mom, my parents are strong. My aunts are strong. I came from strong women. I had to be
Yes,
tough.
absolutely.
But the little LaToya, who this is what I saw, who was always timid and crying and shy and trying to, like you said, please people and do the dishes and clean your room and make sure this is right, get the best grades and still try to be a little girl like 6th grade, 7th grade and be in pageants and being pushed. And the expectations were not a for little girl. So you can't keep holding on to that. You got to let little LaToya and say, oh, I did the best that I could for a little girl. I didn't know. I didn't know that, I was just supposed to be playing, but I had to come in the house to do this.
Right,
But
right.
that wasn't your mom being mean or your dad being mean or your grandparents. They did the best that they knew how
Right.
to do. And we do that as parents. I've made mistakes raising my own daughter that my parents never did. I've done crazy stuff, but as you grow, you learn. Because like
Right.
you said, there's no manual. So when I ask you what beautiful you brought out of that, until you can forgive little LaToya and say little LaToya was people were trying to make her a grown
Right.
up, or you were hearing things you should have never heard. You were
Right.
seeing things you should have never seen. But people just were doing what they knew how to do. There's no manual. Nobody said, make your kids go in another room. Send your kids to somebody else's house. Don't say that in front of the kids. Don't do this. Or LaToya is not this person, and this person, she's her own person. But that little girl was sweet. She just needed somebody to nurture. So even all the love and nurturing that I showed you, I can't make you forgive your little self. You have to do that yourself. And when you do that, you go, you know what? Mom's not perfect. Dad's not perfect. My sister, my cousins, nobody's perfect. I have to forget about that. Because I'm in the now. I'm Dr. LaToya. Not that you're above anybody, but little LaToya, you can't go back and we can't change any of that. I can't change some of the wrongs I've done or some of the things I've done parenting that I just didn't know. I thought, oh, this would be cool. Let me just send her out here with this. Maybe she shouldn't have been out there. So, but to me, I respect that you don't see beauty in it, but I do. I see that. I see, because I can remember your grandmother. I can remember hearing her sing. I can remember your grandfather on your dad's side. And I can remember so much that was good, but you were little.
Right.
So you didn't see that.
Right.
So you can't
Yes.
see that.
Yeah, you can't
so
see that.
it would take somebody else saying there was beauty in that.
Right. And there's and I don't want to, there's moments with the beauty in the people, but I'm saying in the process, when I think about the developmental process of a child, it's hard to see it from a child's lens when you're operating from beyond your years or you're in situations. It's like, well, I don't know what that is. We talk a lot about, we all talk about Tate. We talk about baby Eli, and how much joy he has. I always tell her, I always say, I hope that his life treats him so kindly that he does not lose that.
Right.
Because it's through our life experiences that we lose all of that, right? And so when you have the weight on your shoulder, it's hard. Yeah, of course you love your I can remember all the things about my grandpa Robbins. I can remember everything about my granny Clesta and Poppy. I spent all the time, but part of them is in me, that strength that some people are like, whoa, it's because of my grandfathers and my father, and then having the experience of being raised by women. But when we think about just childhood, in the fact that, so the surrounding, there's wonderful things, but I guess I'm thinking in terms of childhood, just being a child. And that's, and that's a lot of stories, where people felt like, you know what, I really didn't really get to experience like just being a child. But the people around me, there's beauty in all of that.
Absolutely. It is hard to go back and look and go back and reflect, because if you don't have a lot of great things or great feelings on the inside, that's hard to pull that back up. That's not comfortable. I mean,
It's not. But one of the things that I will say is that I went through a process probably around 2020. I always say that before doing anything, even with launching into ministry, I felt like God just like pulled me out and put me on this operating room table and was just doing this spiritual surgery. So part of the journey of what you're talking about, I had to dig up all of that, and be able to say, like, you know what, this happened and this is what it was. And this is where you are now, and this is a time to heal. But one of the things is that made me, when I think about those different stories, I went through and went and saw a therapist, and she was telling me, she said, you need to go back and look at who you were at 1 and 5 years old. Your truest self is going to be from the ages of 1 and 5. So what I did is I said, let me use this as an experiment, and I'm going to go talk to Aunt Kathy, because Aunt Kathy is another one that I spent a lot of time with. So I know that she would be able to tell me, whoa, who was I back then? I talked to my mom, and I think I talked to one additional person, but I went through and said, well, explain to me who I was at 1 through 5. I'm doing an assignment. That's what I told her. I'm doing an assignment because, I've been trained to keep this exterior up, so I can't let y'all know what I'm doing and what I'm going through. I just need to, let me see what it is that you can tell me. And so when I talked to Aunt Kathy, I think it might have been Aunt Cecilia I talked to too. When I talked to Aunt Kathy, she really touched me in such a way. And she didn't know. She says, I just remember you sitting watching Thriller, Michael Jackson. She said you was sitting there, because you love Michael Jackson. She said you were sitting there watching Thriller. She said, and I could see the fear in your eyes. I could tell that you were just, uncomfortable and afraid. She said, but you sat there looking like, I'm not going to move though. So she said, so that told me that you were willing to confront and face your fears. And she said, so I watched you live life like that, which is, I'm afraid, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to look this in the face and I'm going to face my fears. And I was like, wow, wow. And she don't realize that it really just, it was like, okay. So I'm sitting on the phone trying to, because one of the things is that in childhood, when we talk about the beautiful parts of childhood, one of the things that I often talk about is that I did not, it was almost like, you better not cry. Many people are told that you better not cry. You better not. Well, the beauty can be hard in fighting that when you can't cry, you can't show emotion. It's the pressure to no. And in some cases, what you laughing for? Be quiet. All of those different things. What's so funny? So then it's like, okay, so I got to be totally what do I do? So that's too much work. So then you got to overthink, and you got to think about, okay, now this one don't want me laughing, this one don't want me crying, and this one don't want me saying nothing. Okay, well, I'm just here. And so then it's like, okay, when you talk about beauty, there's beautiful things, but I'm talking about from a perspective of a child, that's a little struggle. And so I talked to my mom, and she said to me, I said, Mom, well, what did you see at 1 to 5? Now, here I'm often called like, you're the barefoot preacher because you love walking around barefoot. And so I think people just think that I just started trying to be trendy, right? And so one of the things is I love to be authentically me, which is you not put no pressure on me. If you ask me a question and you tell me to be right, because this is what the producer, everybody on here said, be truthful. I don't want to be judged or, well, no, you should be thinking like this. Well, I'm being truthful with what you asked me to do. Right. It goes back to Mom and Dad used to have me in commercials when the producers were saying, and I was auditioning in Chicago, since a kid, 5 years old, say your mom makes the best spaghetti. They want me to say what they want me to say. I said, no, she don't make the best spaghetti. And they said, you need to say, my mom makes the best spaghetti. I'm like, but she don't. I'm saying, I'm being honest. I can remember my dad in the background, Snoop, you say that line. You get that line right. And so you go about life always having to do what others have said, And so when my mom said something to me that really touched me too, she says, I remember you walking around Mama and Daddy's yard barefoot, smelling the flowers at 2 and 3. You love to go and take your shoes off and just dig your feet in the ground and just walk around smelling the flowers and walking throughout the grass. And it made me think about, that's what I do today. And some people just say, you just up here just trying to do something, and it's like, no, that's just my natural, my natural element.
You're a very happy kid then. That was that was making you happy.
Yeah, that was making me. Yeah, that was making me. That was making me happy. And so those, it's just tough, and my heart goes out to kids who have a lot of weight and responsibility.
For sure.
Because it robs them of that childhood and being able to see those beautiful things for all of the pain and all of the different things that you experience. And then the last one was Poppy. When Poppy said, I was talking to Aunt Cecilia, and she was telling me, she said, I said, what did she see? She said, well, I said, I remember Poppy saying, that gal is totally, she ain't afraid of nothing, because he called me Toto. So, I had Toya, Snook, and Toto, And so he said, Toto ain't afraid of nothing. He said, I don't even think that girl afraid of snakes. Right. He said, the snakes in the yard and stuff, that girl, she said, that gal, because he said gal, that gal may not even be afraid of snakes. And I was up at the tip of the stairs, being nosy again, listening. And I'm like, no, Poppy, no, I can't deal with them, And so all of those memories did bring back something that was special to me in concerns of family. But from the perspective, and that may be just me, just looking at, like early childhood and the experience of what children should experience, and guarding them and protecting them from the things that they don't need to know about, and being very careful and not taking your own challenges and making them take them on with you, as if I see that happening sometimes where people don't have networks, and so their kids become their network. Their children become their people that they vent to and they talk to, and that robs them of that joy and that peace and the love that children
that's too much.
need.
It's too much for kids to process. They don't know. So that's too heavy for them. And so then they end up trying to comfort and console and take care of their parents. And that's the role reversal.
Yes.
Let the babies be babies. They don't understand why you broke up with Bobby, or why so-and-so walked out on you, or why you can't pay the light bill. Don't put the light bill in their name.
In their name. Yeah. Right.
They 4. 3.
Yeah.
So, you're right. It is a natural instinct for you, and I'm the same way, to try to protect kids. It's fun to see babies just falling, and like you said, Eli playing and just happy and just enjoying life, because they don't need to know about the heavy stuff. The heavy stuff will come.
Yeah, the heavy stuff gonna come.
The heavy stuff will come.
So if you are listening and you have children, you have to keep that in mind, because those are pains and those are challenges that those children will deal with years after, and I have some people going, well, you need to do this more. And it's just like, you've just discovered this. And so you need to do this a little bit more, and then show me how to do this, because in our upbringing, and I get that now. Like, why did you say this at 12, but now you got a whole different epiphany at my at me at 15 or me at 25. And so God had to show me too that, what, people are evolving, and so you're not the same person as a parent, at 18, I'm not the same. I don't parent the same way as I do at 45.
Right.
Shia says, Ariane says all the time, Shia got the save mama. I got the mama that was out running the streets and stuff. And so she got the save, she got the save mama. So she is a little bit different, And so, but that helped me to see and so everybody is always growing and evolving. But it's so important that with childhood, I believe, in order to create those beautiful memories, and for children to say, now it's going to be some tough road. We know that. But how do you be that shield and that protector, so that all they see is that?
Because you don't want to rob them.
Right. You don't want to rob them
of their childhood.
Right.
They can't go back and get that.
Right.
Speaking of Michael Jackson, that you loved, he didn't have a normal childhood. So he was always seeking and trying to get that back, because he was robbed of that. He didn't get to just have fun. He had to work in the studio and sing all night and perform for his dad.
Right.
So that's not fair. He couldn't get it back, even though he tried, as an adult. And then people thought it was weird. because of his behavior, acting like a child, but he didn't get that. So you're right. It does rob kids, and it's not fair.
Yeah.
They can't get it back, and you want them to say, "Oh, I had a great childhood." No, I didn't. I really didn't, because I was trying to help you and save you and fix you and nurture you as the child,
As the
saying to
child,
parent.
right? As a
that's
child,
all I remember.
yeah.
Is taking care of you. I don't remember you. You take care of me. Bring me this. Get me that. Go get that. Get this. Fix this. You know. So yeah. You're right.
And we become entitled as parents because we say, "Well, I birthed you and I did this, so you owe me." It's like I asked to be here. And so I said to myself, like, how I pray that the Lord allows me to still parent, because I believe that who you are, because you hear that classic thing, well, they 18 now, they out the house. Well, what they go through at 21 is a little bit more scary than what they were at 2 and 3. And so as my daughters progress, I see them going through challenges of their own, and now they're adults. So now I have to parent from a different way. I can't say, well, they 18, they got it. Well, you need to be worried about me and what I got. It's like, well, no, like, how do I do that? They support and they see, but I do that to, as you have done, let me bring you along so that you know how to do this as you go throughout life, but not that this is your responsibility. And if you don't, then you can't relax. So some people say, well, you just need to relax. You just need to relax, and you just need to. I hear that all the time. You just need to relax, and it's like,
uptight.
And you're just so uptight. And it's like, all I know to do is to get in. Now, if somebody's taking the lead, then I'm cool. I prefer to play the background. That's just me. But if I have to step up, then I know how to step up, and taking on responsibilities and feeling as though, you know what, I got to do this, or I have to be the one jumping out here or listening to, let me figure this out. But lately, and I know we're starting from this place of where did this began. And so that's why I have had to learn to protect my space. So I do think about the little LaToya and how back then she wasn't maybe able to protect her space. And, it might have came through that God sent you, because I always say that God always put people in my life to make up for the deficits of what I felt like I did not have. He's always done that.
He's always concerned about you.
Yes, he's always concerned. And so now what I do is say, I have to learn to protect my own peace and space. And so sometimes, until I learn, because life is a whole journey. Nobody tells us what to do. So I draw back. That has been maybe my mechanism. It's like, oh no, I can't, I can't do this because this is taking me, no, I got to protect my peace,
it's
space.
To protect your peace. You have to, because nobody else will do it.
Yes.
They'll just keep taking and taking. They don't mean to, but when you've got 2 or 3 people calling, asking you this, and you need to go here, and you need to be here, they don't know that you have 10 or 12 other people pulling at you. So you have to be able to say, I'm just going to sit back for a minute, because it's too much. And then, like if you're it's just like over processing, it's over. And then that's how people kind of lash out and then say things that you didn't mean, because you short with this person, because this person is waiting. You got a deadline for this. You got to be here for this. Show up for this. And then they want you to be smiling. Yeah. They don't know, like, everybody has moments. There'd be something wrong if you didn't have a meltdown moment every now and then. Like, so that is a great thing to have. You have to protect your peace. You have to, whether it's you by yourself sometimes, or you in the car, or you at home, or you and your husband, or you protect that peace, and don't let people make you feel guilty for you saying, no, I don't want to come today. No, I don't want company today. No, I don't want to go. I'm just going to sit back. I'm just going to stay at home. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to explain it. I don't explain anything. I let people figure it out for themselves. I won't be there. I don't have to say, the dog died, or I'm just tired, I'm sleeping. No, I won't be able to make it today. Respectfully, and that's usually for me. I just need some quiet time. And quiet time helps you, you can go back and like, now what happened? What did I do? It could be like days ago. Like, what did I do? How would I do that differently? Or how can I be better? Or how can I help somebody else? Every day I want to help somebody. If I can just do 1 or 2 things or encourage somebody. Because you're just, what are you doing if you're just sitting, sucking up grabbing stuff and gain the world.
Yeah,
You know,
lose
like I
yourself,
got the best car, I got the best house, but you miserable. I see people dressed up, a dressed up mess all the time. Coming out of the house, taking an hour to get their hair and their makeup or their shoes, and you want to look nice,
Right,
but then
right.
you nasty
Said, man, yeah.
on the inside. So, you know, go someplace and just think about how would you want somebody to treat your child or your mother or your
Right.
aunt or your grandmother? Like, people don't think about that. They just, you know, you want to be at every party, at every show. No, protect your peace. Stay at home. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Quiet time. You can't be everywhere.
You can't be everywhere.
And you can't be everything for everybody.
Right. And I had to learn that. And that comes with some sacrifices and some hits because everybody doesn't understand. Like, you know what? I can't pour on an empty cup. And so I had to tell someone once before, like, I like going, and you know me as a child, if you tell me I couldn't do something, I had to prove that you were wrong.
Always.
And so that whole you can't do this or you can't is sometimes that was manipulation. I now I've learned at 45 that sometimes I was being manipulated to do certain things because of the fact that, oh, I know her butt and all I gotta do is tell her that she can't do this. So I was telling someone one day, like, you know, when you say you can't or you give me a challenge, that's like a drug for me, you know, because I gotta get into performance mode and prove that no, you are not going to tell me that I cannot do this. And then I had to eventually learn that that is totally unhealthy because the motive was no longer about like now where I'm at, like, okay, I'm doing this because God has called me to do these things and this is what I'm doing for me, you know, for what he's called me to do. But before it was like, I got to do this because I got to prove that you are totally wrong. And that is totally toxic, you know, and everybody's getting what they want because I'm out here thinking that I'm trying to prove people wrong, you know? And so, that's important that we do protect our peace and know that it's okay. No. And you know what? You're going to be upset for me saying that I can't do this, but it's dangerous for me to get into that space again because I'll lose myself in that, you know, so I got to pull back, you know. I've learned the power of rest, and God had to bring me to that point where that it's okay, you know. Is that because it was like you just going like a racehorse, like get as much as you can done, go, where it was unhealthy, you know. So with just being that person that was pushed to do and just thrive, and you have to perform, you know, you have to produce. You know, and so even I talk about a lot of times in my stories about when I had Shia and how I kind of was told, like, you know what, the WNBA player just had a baby and she was on the court within, you know, 18 hours. She was back out there. You need to get, I got to be like the WNBA woman. Let me get up. And I was out there having the baby and right back into work within hours. I think you came because it was a near death experience, even with that, even in the delivery room. It was too much. And so even in that, I'm like, okay, I got to get out here. I got to do. So some of that drawback has been like, no, I got to draw back in order to kind of protect that young girl, but then yet find out who God called me to be, you know, and what he's called me to do. And then, as you mentioned in the first episode, learning to be unapologetic about it, you know.
Apologize to people
and so,
or feel guilty.
Yes.
But I sometimes people think you have to be the first to cross the finish line. You have to win. You have to. But sometimes I can remember races. I don't know who won, but I remember hearing the story, or the news story was somebody went back to help somebody else, and they walked them across, or they fell and they helped pick somebody else up. But the winner. Nobody remembers really the winner, but it's sometimes they push you to win and be the best, and that's not always the best.
Right.
Sometimes it's helping somebody else, protecting your peace, sitting down, being quiet, go visit somebody or not visit somebody. You know, and those are all good things. Winning is great, but sometimes the winner really loses.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
That's a heavy.
That's a heavy weight.
That is a heavy weight.
And that's the cost. You know, it's a cost to all of that, you know, and people don't recognize that. So it's a cost because you lose a lot. You lose a lot of relationships because you're stuck with trying to figure out, well, how do I do this and do this for, so it's a cost and it's a heavy weight, and I think sometimes as a child, those costs were there too. Like in order for me to get this love and affection or attention, I got to do what you say. And I'm thinking I'm just being a good child. You golden child, and you just doing what, but not realizing until you grow older that all that was manipulation. That was manipulation. That was a way to get you to perform and to do all of those different things, And so this is heavy. This is really heavy because we're working our way up to getting to a point of who I am today, but then going back to seeing where we come from. And so where I've come from. And so a lot of this is processing too, which I've done with several individuals, like just processing and being able to say, yeah, this is me, but then helping others around me too that have dealt with similar situations and they're trying to break out of that too.
I've talked about you for years. I told, and I worked with youth groups and young women. You were always my story. You were always my go-to for being a young mom, being a young teenage mom. And it doesn't have to look like what people make it look like. It doesn't mean you're a bad person because you're out there, you're a fast girl, or, you let some boy is taking advantage. No, it's just life experiences. You're just growing up and got in a predicament. And but it made you, it pushed you, it propelled you. It almost like just sent you off a little faster, like on a different trajectory, because what you just said, you felt that people thought you couldn't because you had a little baby, but you figured it out. You made it work.
Yeah.
I mean, you and Sean together, and with this little tiny baby who had the personality that was just all bundled up, which she was a comedian, she was a singer, she was smart, she was just this little sweet little baby, but you all balanced that. And I've always wanted you to be able to balance this life and family with your success and all the other things and things that I always wanted you to be able to balance. Just sit down for a minute, but I couldn't tell you to sit down.
Yeah.
It would be like, you sit down when you get tired, or you're going to get sat down. You'll sit down eventually.
Yeah, I had to figure that out.
But it was just sometimes a lot.
Yeah.
But you do have to find that balance, and it's not always comfortable because then you feel like you're letting somebody down.
Right.
You're not being the best. And you got your kids who might need something, but their needs are being missed because you over here trying to take care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And you've missed something over here. But we all do that as parents. So, if you've learned it, or it doesn't matter how old you are, when you figure it out, you hold on to that. And you don't go back to that, busy. Busy is nothing.
Right.
Busy means nothing at the end of the day. And people should just be kind and nice and gentle and not have expectations. They want you to be perfect, but they can do anything else. They expect you to just be always on and always doing everything right and saying the right words, and like you're under a microscope while they over here cutting up, acting up, doing all kind of stuff, and tell you all your wrongs. But just because I don't point out your wrong doesn't mean I don't know you have them. I know. And for the church that I'm at now, I direct the choir. And people don't like that. People have stuff to say. They can remember what you did or who you dated or who you were with. And one of the young ladies in the choir, she was like, she calls me Auntie. She said, Auntie, how do you direct the choir? All these people, they talk about you. And I said, I don't do it for them. I said, the people behind me, I don't care what they've said. I don't care what because I'm not judging them. They can't judge me. I'm doing what I do for the Lord. I don't care. If you try to base everything on what you do on what somebody might say or what they might say about your past, people will bring up your past forever to try to tear you down.
Yeah.
That's not what you focus on. I do not care. I'm not a people pleaser. I don't care if you don't like me. I love you anyway.
We sound
I
alike.
genuinely love you.
Yeah.
But you genuinely are not a part of my life. So there's a lot of people, and this probably sounds so mean to say, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. There's some people who, you just know. People who just pick. And then, somebody will say, oh, so-and-so said this. I don't spend holidays. I don't spend Thanksgiving. We don't spend time together. But I love them. Yeah. But I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. Yeah.
And someone said the other day when people are talking about you, well, they got a good subject.
Well, you helped me. I know we getting ready to wrap up, but you said something to me that I laugh at because you taught me how to laugh at when people say things as a kid. Because I remember something happened and I was somebody made a comment because we said we were doing no names. Right. And I came to you crying saying, well, they said I couldn't go do this and that because I'm promiscuous. And you said, girl, please. You said, toy, please. They don't even know what promiscuous means. So I was like, you were like, then I said, what? And I'm crying. You like, they do not know what promiscuous means. And so I was like, okay. And sometimes I still laugh at that because when people doing all that talking, it's like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You know, like, no, we're going to go on. You know, we're going to go on.
They have a great subject.
Yes.
They have a great subject. You know, they're talking about you and they have a great subject. They have a great person to talk about. That's all I can say.
Yes. All right. And so I want to ask you something though.
Okay.
I want to ask you something. What's something you protected me from that I never realized? And I think you kind of touched on this in episode 1 a little bit, and maybe still don't fully even really understand. All right, that was heavy today, and that wasn't easy for me because I do armor up, and I tend to keep.
Crying is good, though.
Yeah, you know, I was told I should never cry, so it's so I've struggled with that. But that's a wrap, guys, for today. Gentle giants. Remember, life is all about balancing strength with softness. And until next time, stay inspired, stay true to yourself, and keep shining brightly. Remember, if you have not already subscribed to this page, please subscribe and share and tune in next week. That's a wrap.